It's a teen talk skating podcast where I embarrass myself. Hello, and welcome to episode number 74 of the Teen Talk Skating Podcast. My name is Van Gogh, and I hope you guys are doing very, very well. I actually do not have any notes about like my life or anything that I usually say before the actual episode starts. My life has been fine. This week was kind of mediocre. I kind of didn't do that much. I actually was kind of productive, but not productive in like a bunch of fun things, more productive in things like that. Just like I had to do, and then I gotta start my summer homework for school and everything. And yeah, I definitely gotta start doing that. But until then, I'm literally giving myself the month of June like kind of off and not really do much. And so that's what I've been trying to do is not to do much, honestly. And now we have the energy to get into July where I will actually start doing stuff. I hope you guys are having a good summer. I hope it's not too hot. It's literally been so hot where I live, and I literally cannot take it. They cannot put an ice rink where I live because of that. And that's why I'm not a professional figure skater who's going to the Olympics next year, is because there's no ice rink where I live because it gets so dang hot. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing very, very well and maybe not crashing out over the heat and the weather and whatever else is going in your life. Hope school and work is going well. If you're still in school, I hope you get out soon. I know I keep on saying that every episode this summer, but like, come on, it's gotta end soon, right? It's probably ending this week. It's probably ending today. Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, let's go over to our program of the week before I crash out and actually start ranting way too much. So yeah, see you there after the theme song. Program of the week. Okay, so for our program of the week this week, I have a very, very, very excellent program by ice dancers. What am I saying? In the ice dance discipline, it's in ice dance. I don't know. It's an ice dance program. It is the free dance of Caitlin Hawayek and John-Luc Baker of the USA. From the 2015 edition of the Fort Continent Figure Skating Championships. Their music and this season or that season was Romeo and Juliet by Abel Korzeniowski. I'm very sorry if I'm saying that name wrong, but it's the Romeo and Juliet from the 90s, the one with like Leo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, question mark? I can't remember, right? Kate Winslet. Am I crazy? No, it's Claire Danes. Okay, Leo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. I'm very sorry to Claire Danes that I messed that up. But it's the Romeo and Juliet from 1996. And I want to say that I think this program is perfect for them because to me, they kind of look like Romeo and Juliet. If you told me that Caitlin Hawayek and Jean-Luc Baker were Romeo and Juliet, I would totally believe you. Like, they just give off that right vibe. The outfits are so nice. It's like this lilac purple gradient to this dark blue, purpley, dark blue kind of vibe on it. And it's so beautiful. Anyway, specific parts of the program I really liked. I really liked the beginning of the program. They're facing away from each other, and then they face towards each other, and then they, as they start their crossovers, they face away, they face together, they face away, they face each other. It's just like that symbolism to me, like it goes really well together. Like like the idea of Romeo and Juliet, like not really liking each other first, and then liking each other once they discover each other, and then it leads into their first very cool lift. Jean-Luc Baker goes into the spread eagle and holds on to Caitlin Hawayek's like neck, I guess, and she holds on his torso and she's kind of floating in air and putting one leg back. It's a beautiful, beautiful curved lift kind of vibe there. I really, really like some of the steps in this program. The step sequences are really nice. To me, like, the step sequence is like that mandatory element that doesn't always make you go wow from every team or pair. But in this instance, I really like it. It felt very much simple, but it had that emotion. There was one part where Kaylin Hawayek, she went into a split jump, but then she was kind of assisted by John Luke Baker. She did that. It's a very cool part of that transitional movement. And a lot of the steps, that was the neighbors do not. That was, I don't know why they're doing fireworks. I'm sorry. That was the neighbors if you heard that. But I really do think a lot of the steps here are very well connected. They're smoothly done. Their lines on the ice are very nice. Just it goes well, very, very well together. Okay. Other moments of the program I really, really liked was the spin towards the very not the spin, yeah, the spin, no, the lift towards the very end. The lift towards the very end of the program where John Luke Baker goes into another spread eagle, and oh my god, that's the neighbors. It's the fireworks, I promise. And then Caitlin Hoyak, she steps on one of his legs and stands up really tall. It's like super cool. And then she quickly switches over to the other leg, and then she gets very lifted down, and they go into a little rotational movement. It's just what a good little choreo lift there. And then the end of the program is just like it felt good. The music is very contemporary. The story is there. It's a feel good program. It's a very youthful program to me, but it's still so well developed. And I really do think they captured the essence of Romeo and Juliet really well and incorporate obviously their technical elements with it, and they show very very nice components. And I really do think if they ever make another movie adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, I think they should cast Hoyak and Baker in it. Anyway, that was the program. Go check it out after this episode. Caitlin Hawayak and John Luke Baker, their free dance at the 2015 Fort Collins Figure Skating Championships. Now it is time for our main episode. That was your program of the week. Okay, guys, so it is time for our main episode. As you just heard the program of the week say. That was also me who said that, by the way. But anyway, this week's episode is a video essay episode. Again, there is no video. I just call them video essays because it's very similar to what people do on like YouTube and stuff, where they have a video and they like talk and rant for a bit. But the idea about these episodes is that I kind of analyze or observe upon a certain issue or problem or just something very intriguing in skating that I think we should be paying attention to. It's usually very much a problem that we hope that we can solve. Today's is not so much a problem, but if you're wanting to, watch some of the ones about kind of issues in the sport, I have ones about social media and figure skating, about fame and figure skating, toxic masculinity and skating. I have a ton of episodes like this that kind of delve into the deeper parts of the sport that we don't really see beneath, that are lying beneath the very beautiful parts of the sport that we see, the jumping and the art and everything. But these, very big issues that are within the sport that I like to analyze. But like I said, this episode is not really like an issue based video essay. It's more of a theoretical based kind of thing. Look at me using my vocab. But it is a very theoretical thing because like you saw probably in the title before you clicked onto this podcast episode, today's episode is all about if figure skaters can do quintuple jumps. And if you don't know, if you don't know, quintuple jumps are jumps in which you jump and you rotate 5 times in the air before landing on the ice on one blade. And obviously, jumps are a huge part of skating. I'm specifically talking about single skating today, so men's skating and women's skating. Yes, I do know that you can throw quintuple jump in pairs. Yes, but that's not really the main focus of this episode. And obviously, in ice dance, there are no jumps. That'd be kind of crazy. But anyway, so in the singles discipline specifically, jumps are obviously a very huge deal. They make up the majority of your technical score. If you can't land jumps, you're not winning no competition. Just saying, right? And so jumps are a huge part of it. And a lot of people over time, as I'm going to discuss kind of the history of jumps and skating, have added more rotations or jumps. So first we did the singles and then people got bored. Let's do the doubles. They earn more points, the triples, the quads. And now we're kind of questioning if we can do quintuple jumps. We thought a long time ago that the quad was kind of impossible. A jump and 4 rotations in the air and a landing is impossible. But then we did that and a lot of people started doing it. And now we're like, maybe can people do quintuple jumps? And I'm going to discuss all about this issue, what kind of presents with skating. This question to me is a very loaded question. It's a very dangerous question to see if we can add quintuple jumps to single skating. And again, specifically single skating. But before we delve right into the idea of quintuple jumps, I want to talk kind of about the history of jumps in skating because I think that will kind of help us understand why these jumps exist and kind of why we're always reaching for that next frontier, if you will. So a history of jumps in skating. So skating has been around for a while. I don't know the exact dates. I'm not a historian. I'm not an archaeologist. I'm not an anthropologist. But, it's probably been around for a few thousand years, millennia, yada, yada, yada. And obviously the main, point with skating back then, skating with blades on your feet, with metal on your feet, was to survive. It was a way to travel. Obviously, rivers in cold places would freeze over oceans, not oceans. Seas would like freeze over time, and people needed a way to get across the sea, across the river, and they needed to do that fast, right? And so skating became a way to do that because instead of going slow in your little tiny shoes, you could go on blades that go a lot faster. And so people would, go on their little skates mostly to survive, to go back home really quick, to skate over here, to skate over there. It was not something to do for fun. It was not something to do for sport. It was very much a survival thing. And jumps were not part of that, right? Like there was no point in doing a triple axel when you're just trying to get to your house. You know what I mean? In the middle of the cold Arctic or something. You know? And so the jumping part of it obviously was a recent advent that came along with the sport. The jumps part of it, as far as I know, did not come until the late 1800s and obviously now in the 1900s. The jumps were not done back then. In fact, I don't know if early ice skates even had like toe picks and really edges that you could really jump with. It was mainly again just for basic movement. And so the invention of jumps started in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. And that's where we get a lot of names for our jumps from. A lot of people are sometimes like, why do we call it an axle? Why do we call it a salchow? It's because they're based on the founder or originator of jumps. So we have Axel Paulsen with the axle jump, Ulrich Salchow with the salchow jump, etc. And now we have these six main jumps we know today, which were invented originally, obviously, as single jumps. So we have the toe loop, the salchow, the loop, the flip, the lutz, and the axle. The six main jumps of figure skating that are counted in the rule book and la 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 and are scored and everything. So obviously they were originally as single jumps. We did not just start landing quad versions of those jumps immediately. So, back then it was just single jumps. And honestly, I don't even know if the jumps were required back then. I think the jumps were just kind of like, hey, if you can do it, you can do it. But then from the 20s to the 40s, people were like, what if we did like another rotation? Like instead of doing a single and landing on it, what if we did a double? We did two times in the air. And those were the first double jumps. And I think that's really when the start of figure skating really truly began, was the 20s and 40s, where people started being like, hey, let's make this sport harder. Let's make it more intense by adding double jumps. And then obviously with double jumps, people got the idea of doing triple jumps. And so the 1950s to 1980s were really the era of triple jumps. This is when you get a lot of first jumps like the triple axel in the men's field, and in the women's field, the flip and the lutz were tripled at around this time for them. And yeah, and so then we got the quad jumps, the first, very, very first quad jump that was ratified, meaning it was like checked by the ISU, and they said it was, that's the first quad, that's everything's ratified, that's good, was Kurt Browning of Canada and his quadruple toe loop in the year 1988. And then thus on from 1988 is really when the quad revolution began, in terms of people found out it was possible to land quads, and so more people started training quads. So probably in like the 2000 era, we made it very, very common in the men's field. In the women's field, it was not as common to land quads, but we definitely had people such as Miki Ando of Japan attempting quads in competition for sure and training them for sure. But then now in the 2010s, the mid 2010s, I would say up till now is the real like quad revolution, the second wave of it, I would say, where skaters like Jinbo Yang and Nathan Chen began appearing on the senior circuit, putting out a lot of types of quads in their programs and then really encouraging people, other skaters, to incorporate their quads. And yeah, and now the quad is fairly mainstream in the men's field. Many men will include one or two quads in their programs. In the women's field, it is definitely not as common, but we have skaters such as Ryo and Sumiyoshi, for example, who have attempted quads in their programs. So it is kind of getting there. A lot of people, a lot of skaters want to say that they want to start training quads, that they want to try doing quad, land one of their programs one of these days, etc. But, you know, definitely what is important to know, I would say, is that in every era of figure skating, the jumps weren't mainstream immediately. And what I'm saying by that is that, like, just because Kurt Browning did his quadruple toe loop in 1988 did not necessarily mean everyone started doing quadruple toe loop suddenly. For example, the 2010 Olympic champion Evan Lysacek did not even do a quad in his program, and that was 22 years after the first quad was landed. And yeah, some other men were doing it, but not all men were doing it. And so it wasn't exactly mainstream because a lot of people want to do cleaner programs and not go for these crazy quad attempts that were dangerous and maybe not the most consistent. They were sticking with the jumps they were best with. And so, quads were only major in the figure skating field, in the men's field, in maybe the last 15 years. So before that, they were not considered super, super necessary to win anything. And still, you can still win a competition without a quad or a medal at it, as Jason Brown of the USA and a few other skaters would show you. But I think the important thing I want to kind of summarize about this section is that many people thought that quads once were not possible. It was like maybe triple is the limit. The human body maybe cannot like handle more. The human body's impossible. Physics, gravity, all these crazy things are playing into it. And the people that triples are it. But then when Kurt Browning ended up landing that quad toe in 1988, is really when people start saying like maybe that's not it, and maybe quads are actually possible. And now, obviously, we have landed every type of quad, ending obviously with the quad axle. Ilya Malinen's quad axle back in 2022 was the very first quad axle, and the only quad axle, I believe, to be ratified internationally and done cleanly, if I'm right. I'm pretty sure I'm right. But obviously the quads are possible. We know that, and we see that every single competition. We see the quads. And so I think really the future of it obviously was to be add one more rotation. Now the future is looking towards the quintuple jumps, right? If we can rotate in the air 5 times, is that possible? And so I want to talk about that today. I know that was kind of a long rant on the history part, but that's what we're looking at. Is it possible to land a quintuple jump? Okay, I want to talk about the ISU real quickly because the ISU is obviously the governing body of figure skating. They control all the rules and regulations that go with figure skating. I want to talk about their current kind of opinion on quintuple jumps. Now, the scoring system actually does include quintuple jumps right now, so skaters actually can do them. They are allowed to do a quintuple jump in competition. The question is if they will do it, obviously, but they can do them if they can do it. You know what I mean? They are allowed to do quintuple jumps. What is interesting to note is that all quintuple jumps currently have 14 are worth 14 points in base value, 14.0, and that's it. It doesn't matter if it's a quad or quintuple, that's crazy, a quint toe loop or a quint lutz, it is a 14 base point value jump, which makes them, if maxed out the GOE, it would be 21 points for a single solo any of the quintuple jumps if you got 5 plus GOE across the board. And it will also make them the least amount of points you could get for a quintuple jump would be 7 points if you got all negative 5 GOE across the board, like if you fell on it, for example. And you could obviously get less if you under-rotated it, but assuming that you rotated it, that's the math that would work out. And so it is legal, right? You can attempt it. It does get you a good amount of points. That is a good amount of points. I did learn recently that combos are currently not allowed with quintuple jumps. I learned it on Reddit. It was very convenient, strangely, for this episode. I was researching for this episode, and this new Reddit post just popped out all of a sudden about how quintuple combinations are not allowed. So thank you to user Fire Flames Frost for that. I need to start citing my sources more, and obviously on Reddit I see a lot of stuff. And so thank you to user Fire Flames Frost for telling us about that. I did not actually know that quintuple combinations are currently not allowed. So you can only do quintuple jumps as solo jumps currently. Yeah. And then another thing important to note is that the quintuple axle, which is a very crazy thing to say to me, has no point value currently. If I went out, let's say, and I somehow managed to attempt a quintuple axle, I would get 0 points. It does not matter if it's clean. It doesn't matter anything. It has no point value. It's 0 points right now. And this could be for many, many reasons. Maybe the ISU does not think that the quintuple axle is very possible, but we did think the quad axle was not possible once in a lifetime. So maybe it is possible that the quintuple axle is a thing. But the quintuple axle has no point value currently, which is interesting because all the other quintuple jumps are worth 14.0, but the quintuple axle has no point value currently, which is important to note for sure. And then obviously the base value I think will change in the future. I don't think the ISU kind of plans to keep all those jumps at 14.0 points right now. Because obviously a Lutz jump is often harder than a toe loop jump or a Salchow jump, and that's why the quadruple Lutz is worth 11.5, I want to say, and the quad toe loop is only worth 9.5, I think, 8.9. I don't even know. It's less, that's what I'm saying. But obviously, yeah, a Let's is harder than a toe loop, but obviously under the current scoring, they're worth the same as a quintuple. But I do think the ISU plan to change that. I do think they maybe are not really focused on a lot on quintuples right now, which does make sense. And so they really haven't assigned a real point value to it. But I would expect a quintuple jump to be worth anywhere from 14 to probably 17, 18 points, maybe, kind of based on the current, like, what is it? Like current spectrum, basically. I would say it's probably going to be in base value wise anywhere from 14 to 18 points across the whole quintuple spectrum. But I think that's kind of it. So yeah, it is legal. That's what I want you guys to know. It is legal right now. I could go do it. You could go do it. Would we pass it? Would we get under rotation? Yeah, but pretend we're both Olympic champions and we're the best in the world, and we could do it. We could actually do it, and would count for points if we did it cleanly. But the main question is, can figure skaters do quintuple jumps? Because it's not really like if it's allowed on the scoring. That's one thing, but also like, can figure skating, what am I saying? Can figure skaters do quintuple jumps? As in, is it biologically, physically, chemically possible to do quintuple jumps? If you have seen videos of figure skaters training, you may or may not know that they use a thing called a harness, sometimes called a fish hook, sometimes called a tripod sent from heaven. I don't know. But basically, it is this little contraption that the skaters can tie themselves to. They jump and then they are tied to that thing, and on the other side of it is a hook, and somebody else holds the other end of the hook. And when the skater jumps, they pull the hook, and it lets the skater stay in the air for a little bit longer to get used to the rotational power that they need to land a triple, a quad, a quintuple, etc. And so, if you don't really know what I'm talking about, I feel like I'm not really good at explaining this kind of visualization stuff. It's in my head, but I don't know how to get it in your head. So, please go watch it on YouTube. Search up like figure skating harness, la la la. But all you gotta know is that a harness helps people rotate faster and rotate better in air. It gets them used to that rotational power. Off ice harness exists. It's on a program. I believe it's called Dartfish. I literally Googled it. I'm pretty sure it's called Dartfish. Is the program that figure skaters use to hook themselves off ice, like on land. It is definitely possible. You could spin on off ice in that harness forever and ever. Probably you can do a quintuple in that. It's not actually that bad because obviously you're off the ice. It's like really, you know. On ice, it also seems pretty possible as far as I know. On ice harness is obviously a bit different because you're on the ice, and obviously it's harder to rotate on the ice because you do actually still need to generate speed and power, etc., to get yourself in the air, and then the harness would be used. But as far as I know, it looks pretty possible because quads, like a lot of skaters who do quads really well, like Elena, for example, like as like the videos I've seen of him in the harness, I'm pretty sure like they just look very easy to do in the harness. And so to me it looks like it might be possible to do a quintuple in a harness. But again, that's kind of off like assumptions and like kind of shady thinking in that way. So maybe not, but obviously, a harness is not allowed in the competition. If you skated with a harness and your coach is on the ice with you, you're getting disqualified. And so, obviously, the real test is that can you perform a quintuple without a harness, as that is how it would be performed in competitions, right? You don't have anything to help you in competition to land a quintuple jump. You have to use your own body, your own speed, etc. And I want to note that about kind of speed and power and leg strength and all those, and angle and the angle you pick your toe at and everything. Those are all very big factors, obviously, in skating that I think a lot of skaters really optimize for. We see skaters like, who's a good example of a skater who's really, really fast? Carolina Kostner, back in her very early career, was very fast. She was a very fast skater, and she used that speed to really help her power through her triple jumps back then. That's a good example of optimizing a factor, right? Some skaters might not be able to land a quintuple jump because their speed isn't enough, or their power as they drive their toe pick isn't enough. But they can obviously build up to that, and a lot of skaters adjust their technique for every jump. They adjust their technique to rotate better. We've seen that with Mawasada, for example, back in the day, reworking her jumping technique entirely to be able to land jumps better. And so I really do think that, optimizing for those factors would allow you to do a quintuple jump. But you would have to have, utmost speed, utmost power, utmost leg strength. You have to have the right angle. And obviously the mental side of it, a quintuple jump is scary. Jumping in the air and rotating 5 times and hoping that you land is scary. It's like the visualization process, the mental process is also a big side that you have to train for as well. Right. And so, it is something that is very important to recognize, is that it's not just a harness, it's not just that. The skater also has to have the speed and the power and the strength in order to do the quintuple jump. But as far as I think, in my little world of theories, it does seem possible if they have very optimized conditions, obviously with their skating, it does seem quite possible to land a quintuple jump. To me, I think it is. I feel like it is, and I don't know if it's my bias, it's my false hopes that's kind of in the way, but to me, I think it is. And I want to point out some evidence. Ilya Malinin, who is the quad god, obviously, he landed every type of quad. He was the first person to land the quad axle. He recently, not recently, I feel like it was 2 years ago, 2 seasons ago, he said in an interview that maybe he's already tried quintuple jumps in practice. I forgot what the interviewer asked, like, what do you think about quintuple jumps or something? He was like, oh yeah, well, maybe I've already landed one in practice. I was like, what the heck is this guy talking about? You don't want to know. But Ilya Malinin claims that he's already tried quintuple jump in practice, and from like his joy about it, like his excitement about it, it seemed like it would have, it made me think that, and I think I made a lot of people think that he probably did it successfully. It wasn't just he's trying to do it. I feel like he's probably done it successfully in practice, which is crazy. And then I believe just last week he had, yeah, it was last week, last Sunday, I believe, he had a video stream because he's a streaming gamer boy sometimes, I guess, and he plays Fortnite, I guess, which is good for him. On Twitch, I guess, check him out. Ilya Malinin had a recent live stream saying that he's attempted both the quintuple toe loop and the quintuple sal cow in practice, which is absolutely crazy. And a lot of people have said that his plans are to kind of debut it soon and debut it maybe sometime after the Olympics and stuff like that. Um, but to me, it does seem possible if you had someone like Ilya Molina, his speed, his strength, and his very, very good tight air position to rotate. It does seem very much possible for Ilya Molina or any other skater really to really land it. Like I said, I really cannot imagine the pressure that kind of pushes against your body, the gravity that must push down on you because you're landing, you're going up so high, you're trying to rotate so fast. I can't imagine the amount of pressure you're like enduring because of that. You are literally like defying gravity, like not to make a Wicked reference, but I haven't even watched the movie. You're literally defying gravity, is what I'm saying. You're defying gravity because you are crazy to try to do that. Okay. The next question I want to discuss is that is it worth it, like score wise, numbers wise? Because obviously we don't do jumps for fun in figure skating. We do jumps in figure skating because they earn you points. And that's the point, right? That's the point, earning points is to win. You want to win. And a lot of people might turn to training new jumps, training harder jumps with a better base value in order to get more points, in order to win, hopefully get more success at those competitions they go to, etc. And this might be a dumb question to you because is it worth it score wise? Yes. Obviously, it has a higher base value. You can get more points from it. So, yes, in a way, it is very much worth it score wise. One example that I have of, is it worth it score wise? It may help skaters who put like an easier triple in the middle or at the end of the program kind of in there. Some skiers will do all these quads and then they'll end off their program maybe with like a triple flip or like a triple loop. And that might be an easier jump for them because they can't repeat another quad toe. They can't repeat another quad sal cow because they're scared of repeating the jump too many times. They got 0 points from it, etc. They got a repetition call from it. And so it might help skaters to put, a quintuple jump at the beginning, which is crazy, to put a quintuple jump at the beginning of their program and then jump all these quads and, have a higher base value potential and hopefully get better GOE at that instead of having a jump that's a little lower GOE that's super easy for them to do, that they get good GOE on, but they're kind of just doing it because they can't repeat another jump. Oftentimes I find that skiers are not they're optimizing their score as much as they can under the current scoring system, but maybe they want to incorporate a quad or something or quintuple or something. I don't know. But why I say that it's not a very black and white question, it's not an automatic yes, obviously it's worth it, is that consistency is super important. If a skater cannot land a quintuple jump without an under rotation, without an edge call, without a quarter call, without a downgrade even, then I don't really think it's worth that much over a quad jump landed very cleanly. Take this for example, for example, let me think, what's a good example? A skater who does a double axel in the women's field is just really, math wise, it's very relevant to the women's field, especially with a lot of skaters attempting triple axels. A triple axel is worth 8 points in base value, and that is obviously a lot of points. A double axel is only worth 3.30 points in base value, which is very low or lower, obviously. And but what's important is that if you're a skater who lands a double axel very, very well, you can easily get an easy 4 points, 4.20 on it if you get very high GOE on it. But if you had a triple axel and you fell on it, that's worth 4 points and you get a deduction of 1 point. So it's basically worth 3 points. Or if you have a quad axel and you downgrade it, it gets you back to a double axel and you get even less GOE. If you popped it, even that would in your single, that'd be even worse base value. And so what I'm saying is that if a skater can't land a jump consistently, then it might not be worth it score wise. It might not be the most strategic thing over another easier jump that's landing cleanly and gets you more points because you landed cleanly. Because the sport of figure skating is really much a maths game, and if you don't really optimize your numbers that well, it can lead to a kind of instances of you trying a jump that you shouldn't probably try because it's not the most consistent, and now you fell on it, now you get a deduction, and now you're not going to win. No, not everyone can win in this game, but that's the main thing for me is that if you can't rotate it, if you can't do it cleanly, you haven't done cleanly in practice, it really might not be the best option to do in competition score wise, and you might just end up wanting to do an easier jump that's a little more nicer, it's cleaner, it's one of your favorites, it's trusty, it's handy, it's the best, the best of the pack. And so another thing is that injury risk is a big thing. Obviously injuries are very common in figure skating and in all sports. If you're constantly trying to do a quintuple jump, trying and do it in practice every day, just because it's worth it score wise, and you get injured, you break your ankle, you twist your Achilles tendon, you twist your knee, you bang your shoulder too hard. Sorry, and your season's over, like that's not worth it score wise because you didn't get a score at all. You didn't go to a competition because you got injured because you were trying to do a quintuple jump. You know what I mean? So if you're trying to do a quintuple jump, you kind of have to be smart about it. You got to be realistic about it. You got to think, can I actually land it? Is it worth continuing to practice? Is it worth continuing to try to do the quintuple jump? If no, then kind of avoid it. You know what I mean? Because the injury risk is bad. If you get a really bad injury, your season could be over, your career could be over, and all because you wanted an extra 10 points in your score from doing a quintuple jump. That's my main concern, is it for sure. Okay, now the question is, should figure skaters do quintuple jumps? The title of this episode is, can they do figure skating? Can figure skaters do quintuple jumps? And for what I understand, I think so. Yes, I hope you guys agree with me on that. I think it is true, but I think with every can, you should always have a should. So, should figure skaters do quintuple jumps is the next question. It's a different question than can for sure. To me, just like I just said, chasing quintuple jumps sounds like a recipe for injury that we obviously we want to avoid. No one wants their favorite skater to be injured. No skater wants to be injured for sure. They have a passion for this where they're doing it. Excuse me, I just had dinner, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know, my body these days. I don't know, but but you don't want to be doing something that's going to lead to injury. A lot of skaters already get injury from triple jumps and quad jumps and even spins and bad falls that they have. It's just, it sounds like a recipe for a disaster for me to do a quintuple jump. And if I was a figure skater, I would personally not try to do a quintuple jump and kind of let other people do it and they can have their glory. Like, to me, it sounds like a recipe for disaster. Like, something's gonna go wrong with it. I'm just worried about that, really. I think that's my main point for that, is that they maybe should not do it because it's kind of dangerous for sure. I am worried that it also sends the wrong message for the sport, you know? Like I do think that it is a cool thing to land a quintuple jump. That's awesome. That's cool. It would get definitely a ton of, publicity for the sport. It would, every the first skater to do it would definitely get their 5 minutes of fame. They would become super famous. Their name would be in the history books for figure skating fans around the world in the figure skating fandom that they were the first skaters to ever land a quintuple jump, and it would be a very cool message for sure. But I'm worried that long term wise, that's what I'm talking about. Long term wise, it would send the wrong message for the sport. And what I want to say is that it would send the wrong message to kids, maybe, I would say is the main thing. Kids, in terms of like skaters who are just starting it, like, hey, you're starting this career, and at the end of it, in the middle of it, you need to start trying to do quintuple jumps. You need That's what we're building out to, is to do quintuple jumps, and you're gonna win everything. And I feel like it's gonna send the wrong message to skaters, maybe young skaters and parents, maybe as well, that quintuple jumps are the way to go. That's the future. You got to be part of the future. You got to chase that. Be the first to do this. Be the first to do that. I'm worried that it kind of sends the wrong message for the sport in that way. That it sends the wrong message that quintuple jumps is where it's at, and that's where we're going to focus on for the whole rest of the future, and that's what we're doing now, and that's a cool trend to follow. And if you're doing quads, it's lame. Quintuples are the new thing. That's kind of what I'm worried about, is it sends the wrong message for people in the sport and also people outside the sport, and say, oh, figure skating's they're just jumping quintuples now. That's it. Like, that's all it is, really. And I want to touch on artistry in my next point, but what I'm also worried about is that if we do get all the quintuples, is are we going to do sextuples next? You know what I mean? Like, are we going to keep on going? Like, is this really what the future of figure skating looks like? It's just people are just going to continue skating and doing more jumps with more rotations and more rotations. It's going to get to 7 rotations. It's going to be 8 rotations. And, maybe that really the future of our sport, is kind of trying to do that. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Personally, I honestly hope it's not how the future looks for our sport. It's just constantly skating and going over more and more rotations. But that's just my opinion. It might be something that excites you, might be something you think is a good idea for the sport of figure skating. It's just to constantly chase after more and more rotations. Is that really, what the future is, instead of staying at quintuples for a bit? Are we really gonna move straight on to sextuples and whatever other numbers, cardinal numbers go after that? I think that's really my main concern there. But yeah, for sure is that the future of figure skating is something to consider. It isn't really just present, right? Skaters right now, like Ilya Malinin, are maybe without how do you say, without knowing it, without that intention, that the current generation of figure skaters is affecting the generation after it, and the generation after that, and the generation after that. If this upcoming generation starts doing quintuple jumps, the next generation is going to want to do it, the next generation is going to want to do it, etc. That's kind of the vibe that I think really trends goes to follow in figure skating, is kind of becoming like the past generation, becoming like your idol, following the standards, etc. That can be maybe not the best for the future of our sport, for sure. Okay, and then the section I want to touch most on, because I know it's a big concern. This is a big concern I've seen a lot whenever people are talking about quintuple jumps, whenever people are in discourse about quintuple jumps and the future of them, is artistry, right? Artistry. I made an episode on this before about kind of the battle between the technical side of figure skating and the artistic side of figure skating. And this is really the biggest debate in figure skating in all of the sport. The biggest debate in figure skating is artistry versus athleticism, or artistry versus the technical score, or artistry versus jumps and spins and whatnot. I'm worried about encouraging quintuple jumps for sure, because I'm worried about it in terms of how it will affect artistry. Again, touching on the skating side, especially the younger skater side. If we look at this upcoming generation and we tell them, your future is in the quintuple jumps, you are gonna do quintuple jumps, like that's how you win now. And maybe that's what we kind of focus on driving skiers towards, is doing quintuple jumps. um Not so much doing, let's work on your rocker, let's work on your Choctaw, let's work on a few refinements in your skating and developing those artistry and components area. Let's work on your facial expressions. Let's work on your hand motions as in your step sequence. I'm worried that we're gonna kind of throw that away, or we're gonna really put very much less importance on that, and the big shining star of figure skating is gonna be those jumps, and it's gonna be only those jumps. That's what I'm worried about, is that we're gonna tell young skiers that, yeah, okay, artistry is great and all, but it's not gonna win you anything, right? It's not gonna win you a competition. You need to do quintuple jump. That's what's gonna win you a competition. Obviously artistry and components are worth, in general, less points than the technical side. Most skiers are getting, around the same, or probably a little bit over more technical score than artistic score than the component score, which is worth less points. So a lot of skiers are working on their skating skills, their composition, and their interpretation is the other one. Why am I so forgetful sometimes? But some skiers are like not working on that. They're focusing more on the jumps all the time. And, solutions wise to this, a lot of people say that there needs to be some revolution in the component side of things, and kind of they should give more components more importance in the overall scoring system than it has now. It's supposed to make up half of your score, 50% of your score, but does it really make up half of your score? You tell me. Honestly, maybe not. Some people say that instead of going from 0 to 10 points of components, you should go to 0 to 15, 0 to 12, and it really increase that a little bit more and give it a little more weight as we, get into the quintuple era, where the jumps will have a lot more base value and weight in the score. And obviously, it's not just jumps, it's not just components. There's also the spins and the step sequence and the choreo sequence as well, potentially making those way more in scores. I would love to see like what's a level 5 spin. We only have up to level 4 right now. Maybe level 5 spins are what we're gonna be aiming for now. Like, I don't know, adding extra features to spin, making the sport more difficult, making it something that people can really chase after. That makes it not just the quintuple jump, not just the jump side of it, but also you can also improve your spins. You can also improve your sequences. You can improve your components, things like that. And so for sure, and um, yeah. Okay, so now I want to kind of summarize the arguments for both sides really, really quick. This is kind of a summary of the whole episode before I kind of make my final decision, I would say, I guess. So, arguments for quintuple jumps in the summary. A lot of people, when they hear about the idea of quintuple jumps, their first answer would be like, yeah, like that sounds like a great idea. Why wouldn't it not? Why wouldn't it not be a great idea? Because it would very much advance the sport forward. Maybe they say, figure skating has been too stagnant over the past few seasons, the past few decades. It's been kind of the samey. If we did quintuples, like that would add a little more spice, it would add a little more flavor, make the sport more interesting. And that's totally a valid argument. It would make figure skating get new headlines as well. Wow, Eli Molina, first skater to land a quintuple jumping competition. Interview with, I don't know, USA Today. Interview with NBC. You know what I mean? It would give that vibe for sure. Um, it would make new headlines for the sport. Maybe people would get into figure skating again, as we say, and figure skating is a dying sport. Not a lot of people are watching it these days, and I'm sure the number is probably gonna even go down in the future. There was that one statistic that said the average age of the audiences in America was like 55. There's like no young people at these events. There's no school kids at these events. It's just, no one wants to go watch anymore. And, I think, a lot of the big argument around quintuple jumps is that if we did quintuple jumps that are new, that are exciting, it's so chic, it's so trendy in figure skating now, it would bring a new life to the sport, new excitement and publicity for the sport. Maybe someone would see a headline, wow, that person just landed a quintuple jump. What if I watch the next competition that they enter? What if I start following the sport? And obviously that's a great thing to increase the engagement in the sport, is to increase the excitement of it. The quintuples are exciting. That's an exciting thing to me too, and it would bring a lot of excitement. If I wasn't a fan of figure skating and I saw, whoa, what's a quintuple jump, I want to see what that looks like on TV. I want to see what that looks like in person. I think I would turn on the TV. I would buy a ticket for an event to see what it's like to see figure skating live and see this quintuple jump in person. It would bring a lot of new excitement and hubbub, and chatting around the sport for sure and discussion. Imagine if that subreddit grew from 30K people to a million people watching it or on it because they're so excited to share the sport and understand the sport because of all this new love. In this current state, figure skating is really only popular every 4 years of the Olympics. It's very much the marquee event of the Olympics, the Winter Olympics. But if we expanded it outside and make people realize, hey, we're doing quintuple jumps outside the Olympics too, we're having other events, it really could bring a new life to the sport, a new fan base that is very much needed. I'm not gonna lie, that is very much needed. I would love to see the sport spread more and more people watching it besides me and whoever listens to this, I swear. And then arguments against quintuple jumps. I have discussed a lot of this already. It might not be worth it score wise. Again, like I said, it's not worth to do a jump that's not consistent. It's not worth to do a jump that you're gonna under rotate. It's just not worth it mathematically. It's never been worth it mathematically, honestly. And yeah, it's not mathematically the best thing to do base value wise and everything. And it will lead, potential for injury. The quad jumps are super dangerous already. People attempting quintuple jumps in an ice rink with getting other people around them, it just sounds very much like a recipe for disaster to me. And like I said, that last point is that if we, start striving after quintuple jumps, it may be detrimental to the artistry side of things, the components, the spins, the step sequences. We would shift our focus away from those and shift our focus towards doing instead these jumps that are crazy and cool and watch for sure. And so overall, can I'm gonna go back to our original question. Can figure skaters do quintuple jumps? Can figure skaters do quintuple jumps? Yes, biologically, physically, to me, it seems possible. Apparently, to Ilya Malinin, it's possible. He's done it before in practice, I guess. Yes, it does seem possible that it is very much possible to do. And yeah, so they can do quintuple jumps. Should they do quintuple jumps is a huge question. It's definitely a huge debate that will continue as the years go by. So both sides have arguments that are super valid. About the artistry side, I totally get that, but also about bringing new publicity to the sport. That's another comment I really do understand because yeah, the sport can feel very lonely sometimes. Wish we had more people watching it around the world for sure. Regardless, I want to point out that we haven't even seen a quintuple jump done yet in competition. I love that people speculate already because we are speculating over something that has not even happened yet that may or may not happen. Where it's like the apocalypse of figure skating. This is the apocalyptic question. We still have not seen a quintuple jump happen. We haven't seen a video of it as far as I know being done without a harness on the ice in a competition. We have not seen it. It's not been in the scoring system yet. Nothing like that has happened. So I think the real debate will start when that does happen, when Ilya Malinin or whoever really does the first quintuple jump in competition. I think that will be the real start of the debate. But right now we're kind of in the preparing for it. It's the preparing. It's like get your armor, get your equipment. We're about to have a big debate over it. And yeah, we might not see the first quintuple for a year. It might be 5 years. I don't know when Ilya Malinin plans on landing it cleanly. We can't predict his mind or any other skater really. Maybe someone else has a quintuple ready to go and we don't know. I think another thing important to note here at the very end is that when Kurt Browning landed that first quad toe in 1988, it still wasn't until probably 2010 to now that it really became mainstream to do quad jumps. And so even if we do again see this trend, this, getting a quintuple jump, I do think the trend will repeat, right? Not everyone's going to suddenly start doing quintuple jumps after the first skater does it. I think what we'll see is that they'll do it and then it'll, some of the hype will kind of waver off. And then in a few years and a few decades, 20 years maybe, people will maybe start training it more to be better. But, with that example, Kurt Browning, it was 22 years, almost 3 decades, probably 2 decades, 3 decades until the quads became really much the standard. Still, I will say quintuple jumps. I don't want to, down this topic at all. I want to say yeah, I don't want to say that it's a terrible thing to talk about. No, I really do think it is an exciting part of the sport that we have to consider, that we have to be realistic for, especially considering the future of figure skating, the generations that come after this one, and all the generations that come after that. Is yeah, should we land quintuple jumps? I want to find out, and the ISU wants to find out, and the world wants to find out, and I do think that is very much the exciting next frontier of the sport, as well as many other things that will continue to happen. But anyway, that is all for this week's episode of the Teen Touch Game podcast. My name is Van Gogh. I hope you enjoy listening to me rant about quintuple jumps, if they're possible, and everything, every question that goes along with quintuple jumps and their ethics and everything. I hope you enjoyed all of that. Next week's episode will probably be another video essay. It might be a skater analysis. It might be analysis of a piece of music. I'm not really sure what goes on my mind. Obviously, the summertime, no competitions to talk about. So I just might talk about something random for fun like this. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It's something that I had in mind for a lot of time, but I hope you enjoy listening to it. And I will see you next week on another episode of a Teen Talk Same podcast. Bye bye.